Did you get a haircut, Valdo?
Not really. I just came from a shower, so I was just looking. Okay.
Okay. No judgments.
So that was what was unusual.
I was going to ask, you know, I love all the traction that's coming out of this defining thing. I'm hoping that Amy Kincaid got involved. CJ, you were on the call, right?
Which one?
The defining the definition thing.
You're talking about the post-survey call that Chad had?
Yes.
Yes, I was.
Okay, so I was wondering if Amy Kincaid made it on the call.
A lot of action items. Actually, if you check the Slack, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. I'm looking.
If you check Slack, he posted 5 things. I signed up for one of them. I think a couple of people signed up for another 1 or 2. It was actually pretty productive background. I think the part that made me the happiest was specific action items at the end of it. And I think we have, gosh, I forget if he said 2 weeks or 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
4 weeks. Yeah. I saw that. I think I included Amy in the group because she had reached out after the last goal call and asked about being involved in definitions of some sort. And then I also know that Tiffany spoke about it in the goal 3 call, but I don't see her on the list. So I'm happy to reach out to both of them to see how they would like to get involved or if they'd like to get involved. But it would be really cool to do a wiki hack of your wiki site and actually fill that sucker out with a lot of these as all of you are coming together.
I have to restart it, but I'm sorry, I missed the first part. What in particular did you want to use the wiki for, or for everything?
I think that, I mean, as you get definitions sorted out, it would be a great place to just put them.
You know, the funny thing is I have to there was a technical issue and I didn't attend to it, so it's not running at the moment. I just have to quickly fix it. However, I initially loaded it with some definitions just as a placeholder, but only for that specific topic. As per our discussion yesterday, I signed up to do sort of a map of it. And so I think quickly, but the first rev I'm going to do using something different and then put it on the wiki.
Okay. So Lauren and Jeff, I don't know if you were part of this discussion. So the Goal 5 has a project team around defining terms. And CJ at one point had created a wiki, which, you know, varying states of input right now, but there's a lot of stuff going on around it. And then I know Goal 3 has a couple of people that are interested in terms, as well as Goal 6. So trying to get everybody to work together on this defining term thing. So it's coming along, but Chad's kind of done a really great job of organizing it. If you'd like to be in this group and you're not already, I'm happy to add you. Okay. So just raise your hand. Jeff, you're like swimming in all the things. No, follow your energy. No, follow your energy.
I don't know that I'm curious about what the outputs from the group are so that I can be in sync with the community, but I don't have time to contribute right in this moment.
Nope.
And I'll also say, hi everyone. I haven't been here for a very long time, but I'm so curious about this conversation. And so I'm just gonna kind of listen for a little while to see how I can even plug in. So first is listening, and then I'll see, because I know that you've been making a lot of progress and doing a lot, but I just wanted to start showing up. So that's really me for right now. And back to you, Cecilia.
Great. Actually, I'm gonna go ahead, CJ.
I just wanted to point out for the group when you mentioned the wiki that the reason that we were discussing and pushing the wiki was not exactly for the output, which is important, but the process by which everybody, you know, that ideas can be vetted and rolled up without getting too linear and chaotic, you know, like in a linear document. The output's important, but it's really it lends itself to a collaborative process. That's all.
I think that's
I'll get that up by the end of the week or in a couple of days.
sense. No pressure. Follow your energy. There's a lot going on. So I'm just going to welcome you all to the call, and I'm going to start shifting things in the agenda. Hopefully, somebody else will also help me scribe, just in case I miss anything. But I will shift that, and then I'm going to, Walter, do you have a check-in question or something that you'd like to start off with? Or Jeff?
Well, I guess just a very simple thing could be like what was on the top of your day today, or what has been so far.
An interesting question. You know, you'd think that you would have that answer, like, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Valto? I missed the question.
Yeah, what has been or what is on the top of your day today?
Oh, for a popcorn question, okay.
Top of mind, you mean?
Yeah. Or in your agenda or priority. I mean, just
race issues in our ecosystem. How's that?
Mm.
What was that? Sorry.
Racial
okay, yeah.
issues, for lack of wanting to expound any further on it. So I had to popcorn. Go Valto. What was your idea? You go next.
Or
well, CJ had.
For me, it has been, today has been really about software development complexity. So not being a developer myself and needed to force to really understand some of the developers' input in one project to be able to take part in deciding priorities for those. So it was one of those things where you have to kind of really try to get a lot in your head in short period of time to be able to be helpful on a topic that is not, you know, a daily thing. So I was kind of waiting for that earlier today and then going past that. So anyway, it's done now.
The audio cut out. Did somebody?
CJ, yeah.
You passed it to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been getting fatigue over the past week or two of all of the issues out there, racial and otherwise. However, yeah, what's on the top of my mind has been something similar, but happened at the school where I was just a professor at, Arizona State University, the Cronkite School of Journalism, if you haven't heard about that. But we were just bringing aboard a new dean, the first new dean in, I don't know, 12 years, and with a lot of vetting. And then just 2 weeks before she was set to take over, a student from her past tweeted out something that intimating she was a racist, and everything, you know, just fell apart. By the way, this I don't know the person or anybody in this personally. It's just a little scary that, you know, one tweet can just tank somebody's career like that. By the way, this woman was one of the founders of the National Black Journalists Association, so it's just you know, even more intriguing and sad. But you know, this dean will never work again. They rescinded her offer, etc. So just I don't know if things have gotten out of hand, but boy, the penalties for uttering the wrong thing or a wrong tweet are getting really scary. Anyway, that's just been on my mind because it's very close, both professionally and also regionally.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I could go. I would say that probably similarly. I've been thinking about and talking about a lot of those things. I maybe piggybacking on what you shared, CJ, I had a monthly call this week with one of my teachers. His name is Ashok Panakar, and I have been kind of a student of his over the last year his focus is around international conflict resolution, mediation, diversity, but he's focused mostly in the last 5 or 10 years of his career around around democracy and around the fragility of democracy and the experiment of democracy. And I think one of the things that's really shocking to me about what you just shared is it's very hard to uphold equality and justice, especially in a place where we have really bad systems of communication and dialogue, and the way that it can just destroy connections and relationships and reputations. Actually, I don't know if that gets to the root of the issue, right? And so we don't have spaces to actually talk about, what are the ramifications if a person did a racist thing? Is that something that's repairable? Are there places to repair those conversations without destroying somebody's future or their past? And how do we balance that in creating a just and equitable society? But basically, right now, you have this kind of culture of character assassination and no dialogue and no places for communication. And people are very ill-equipped when they're feeling conflicted. And so things like you're talking about are happening more and more. And I don't think it's helping us have better discussions about how to resolve these painful differences. And I've been trying to learn a lot from Ashok about how he's seen that play out globally in different societies. And it's kind of been blowing my mind, I guess is what I could say about that. Cecilia.
Thanks. That's deep and really touches on a lot of, first of all, goal 4 to begin with, right? Connectedness and all of that. And today has been from a phone call that I received this morning, which I was really happy to get, to all of the things that have gone on in my day since, the vitalness of clear communication, or making things and trying to hone in on how to do that better, I think is the thing. And I know Lauren, in the work that we do around this ESHIP goals team, Andy and Faye and Christine and Andy, we put together this triangle thing that talks about, at the very base of everything that we do, it's about building relationships and a sense of belonging, so that you can voice those truths when you're comfortable enough to say the thing and call it out in a caring and loving manner. But you have to feel like you belong in an organization or a society that you feel comfortable doing that, right? And as well as interpersonal relationships, to team organizations and things, like how important communication is. And Jeff being like the word guy, to know that words matter and words change the world. And so in less than I don't know, is it more than 160 characters now in a tweet, but how that changed somebody's life, right, CJ? So the importance of communicating well is necessary, and an art, and all those things. So Mike, you've come into this conversation, and we're just going to put you on the spot, because we've gone around and talked about what's been top of mind, or what's on the top of your agenda today. And we circled back from like race to software development, to how one tweet can change the world or yourself, race issues, conflict resolution, fragility, communication. So like, lay it on us. What's on your mind, Mike?
Yeah, so here, I'm right here out of West Salem. So Salem, Oregon is where I reside. I'm a venture catalyst, so community builder for entrepreneurial ecosystem building. So I know I'm in the right spot. I've already got some good resources from you guys in the past. Thanks for that. For me, as you know, my father's Black, mom white, and like I've been really emotionally distraught for the last couple of weeks, just from everything that's going on. Not only that, what's been going on in general, because it's been going on for a long time and have always been a concern, but a lot of family members and, you know, people on the white side and on the black side all are emotionally distressed right now, and everyone has emotions and has an opinion about something, so it just weighs heavy on my heart. So it's been kind of a depressing couple of weeks, I would say. But other than that, as a community builder and a leader, I've already been working on for the last 8 months, helping out our Latino entrepreneurial ecosystem, because it's something that's kind of fragmented in my region. So pushing forward, it's, you know, with everything going on in the media, and, you know, when I talked about Latino entrepreneurial ecosystem building 3 months ago, there wasn't really that big of a buzz. They're like, oh, really, what's going on there? Versus now, everyone wants to the table and everyone wants to learn more about what can we do to like get in and help out, because it's more of a bigger issue that's been brought to the top of the water, right? So it's just one of those things. So that's kind of what's on my mind lately, is just, you know, how can I foster a more inclusive entrepreneurial ecosystem, and be a community leader and just voice my opinion to, you know, bring people together through the love of entrepreneurship. So there you go. You're on mute, I think.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mike. I appreciate it. And so for those of you who don't know, I think most of you do know, we are hosting a community call tomorrow afternoon to give the community space to come together. We have a couple of people who are leaders in the ESHIP Summit community, whether it's on Facebook or the Summit or Slack or Gold Calls or whatnot. So just really short kind of reflections, but mostly we wanted to create safe space for you to share, knowing that sometimes it's really difficult to talk to people that you are around to. So we're going to have some breakout rooms and an opportunity to just be able to come together as a community. So that's what we're, the invite is on Slack. I think you've all received an email. If you have not, please let me know. And I'm very happy to send that out again. And you should have all gotten your emails that the ESHIP Summit will be virtual, will be September 15th and 16th. There is a call for presentations that will be going out shortly as that comes together. Think about the things that you'd like to share about ecosystem building with the world, knowing that in a virtual summit, we will probably get a larger, wider audience than we normally do. So if you have people that just go, what the heck do you do again? Invite them to the ESHIP Summit and they'll be able to attend virtually. So with that, as things have been moving along around this goal and the networks and all of those things, this is really, 2020 is a really clarifying moment. So I'm going to have Valto lead us in sharing some of the updates that are going on and what you'd like to talk about around those.
All right, thanks, Cecilia. So I guess kind of on the theme of not only specific to the connected networks as such, but also more broadly, kind of in the last call we discussed quite a bit on the kind of the open source as potential, like open source methods and open source approaches as ways of kind of bringing more collaboration around kind of shared assets that would be available for ecosystem development, ecosystem builders. And so there's more about that topic on the previous call. There was a great presentation and a good conversation following, and a lot of Slack activity from that. But more so also there has been kind of this type of I guess more focus on trying to also connect some of the different dependent goal topics And then these kind of conversations, as they usually do, they kind of evolve through different calls and topics. But mainly, there's now kind of this I would say somewhat committed activity around finding the two things, basically finding the type of or designing a draft of a process to how we could collaboratively work and come to some kind of a conclusion on how to not generate, but pick and validate the right terminology for ecosystem builder context for the kind of the field of ecosystem builders, because that has, of course, naturally a lot of dependencies between like thinking of educating and using the terminology, whether that's NRP support functions, different builders themselves and organizations providing funding and so forth. So what would be that common terminology that would be for this field that we could then agree that we use this terminology in this context? But the more than just jumping into that kind of terminology discussion from the perspective like let's make a project and come out with a terminology, it's more of a let's look at the process of how we actually go about coming to conclusion what those terminology is going to be, and can we establish that process more as an ongoing permanent thing, and then look at how the outcomes could be documented in a richer shape than just a simple word or term and then their definition, but more of kind of what is the reason for some of those terminology, that it has kind of different perspectives. So if we look at the two sides of the coin, the other side looks the other way, and then the other one, but it's still the same coin. So this type of can we somehow better visualize or bring kind of a structure around so that we can actually combine similar topics or definitions of the same term to increase the understanding and the usefulness of those terms. And these are, CJ brought this great topic that instead of just trying to make terminology for the whole world, we should kind of bring it closer to this field of ecosystem building and why is it needed in this context and so forth. So now then how it connects with this goal 4 is that under goal 4 we have this kind of seeking for standards development and standards of course can include many other things than just the terminology, but terminology definitely should be part of that. And with the process that we are looking to design, we are looking at how that process can also be applied beyond the terminology, but also to other things that we need to find common standards about. For example, KPIs would be like that. And then there are dependency with the terminology and the KPIs, because if we don't know what we call things, then someone will measure different things with same KPIs because they think it's a different, in their mind, a term means A to someone and B to someone else. So they're actually measuring with same KPIs with same term, but they're measuring two different things. So these are kind of why there's then dependency between the goal 5 with the KPIs or the metrics with the terminology, and then back to the goal 4 for the open standards development. And as such, kind of like there is now this 5.x, doesn't have a number, that Chad has taken a lead, created a great survey to collect some of the inputs. On the call yesterday, we went through a lot of those kind of survey conclusions and outcomes. And there's now 5 kind of steps or action points that we are those who have been part of that are looking to take action over next 4 weeks. And those are all in Slack, and it's kind of like if someone feels that they want to take part of some of those steps, they are all collaborative steps. They are not for anyone independently, but we are trying to produce, based on the outcomes of the survey, also some of those activities, and then kind of trying to repackage them, let's say, after that 4 weeks. But the point here was really kind of trying to bring several of these different topics that kind of have their own places, and there's additional that I forgot or even I don't know that would fit into those, but just kind of wanted to see that there's at least kind of a center around those interconnected topics being worked on in that format now. And we don't yet know what it will look like going forward, but anyway, that's what's happening now. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that, and maybe CJ, you can also add to that if you have something to kind of build on top of that or add.
I have a question, if it's all right. CJ, do you have something you'd like to add? No? Okay. All right.
No,
Okay.
sorry, I spilled something in my mouth, so I couldn't unmute it. No, I don't. I think it's all concepts. I think we also need to work on distilling, what the issues are, just like we did in the Slack, just like Chad did, so that now we can just, each take action on it. So investigating the process more, I think it's probably time to just pick something, right? And we're all smart people, and just like you, if I'm not reined in, I'm going to overthink it for the next 3 years. and there's always going to be a better idea. So let's put a stake in the ground and just get it done.
I love that. Done is better than perfect, right? So we're working on that refining. So I have a question, and I don't want to create more platforms than is necessary. Obviously, when all of this started, when the goal calls started, Slack channel was created, and we went forth on this. I find for this kind of collaboration, Slack is a little clunky, and not that I really want to bring yet another platform into the world to figure this out. I mean, Wiki is very like front facing for anybody who would like to see what's going on and refine and get this crowdsourcing kind of thing. But for discussions around these topics, like now, Lauren doesn't have visibility to this 5X channel that was created because she wasn't on the calls, which makes it hard for her to know that there's something going on that she may be interested in. Tiffany's talking about definitions in goal 3. Some of us are on some of us are on many calls. Some of us are only on specific calls. So it makes it really hard. Plus, Slack we're not paying for Slack, so all after 10,000 messages, it's all going to fall off, and people don't talk in a thread. We think we do, and some do, and then you miss all the things because you're not clicking in the thread. And what I'm actually craving, and so I'm just putting it out there because it's a personal need, but what I'm actually craving is something like an old school forum where there are different channels for different goals, and then each goal has a thing, but it's more visible. And so somebody introduced me to Discourse. So I've been looking at it, and I
Discord,
don't know if
right?
Discourse, not Discord.
Discord
is like the gaming thing.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you that, and this has some gaming things to it, but that's really like my son is on Discord, and there's a verbal, like a audio part that has, and we used it at Startup Weekend, and Lauren can tell you, like, our Startup Weekend team on this Discord thing was like, no. But this is actually more like an old school forum where there's segments, and there are free aspects. I think one of the people that I talked to about it was Marcus. So there is a forum that you can charge for, but if you have your own platform, then it can live. If you have your own server, it can live on that server, and you can utilize it free. And so Marcus actually has, and I'm not going to volunteer Marcus, but he said, well, we actually have kind of a server thing, you know. So anyway, just trying to figure out.
Clarify one thing though.
Yeah.
Again, I don't own stock in Wikipedia or anything like that, but you described Wiki as a front-facing thing. I think most people, 99% of the people, only see what's on Wikipedia, and the platform I'm using is the one that Wikipedia was built on. But most of the activity on Wikipedia is something, and all you need to do is log in and click, and you'll see it. Everything, whether it's a definition for something, there's a discussion group, a group of discussion, and there are and the reasons why certain definitions are thrown away or modified are behind the scenes. Once you log into Wikipedia, you'll see now little buttons, and you can see years of discussion behind for each particular, however granular you want to get. And so what you're seeing, though, forward facing, is just the roll up that has been discussed, voted on. There are admins who occasionally will take charge and veto something. So I just wanted to clarify that. And if you want to have some fun, go to Wikipedia or the one that we have, but Wikipedia obviously is populated. Get an ID if you don't have it already, and then click on any page and see the discussion behind the scenes.
I appreciate that. No, that's super important to know, and I think that's definitely needed and a great place to work in a group. I think part of my craving around a platform like this or Slack or whatever is that there's, and I believe Wiki has community around it, but for me as a person who strives for and creates community, it's like I want to be able to, I don't know if there's like a meetup element or something that could be incorporated into Wiki, wherein there's more of a community feel around it.
I would use the right tool for the right job. Wiki is the right tool for part of the job.
Okay.
I wish, I'm going to take a look at Discourse. I love Discord though. Gosh, yeah, if Slack didn't have certain limitations, I like the ability for Slack to, you could see everything, but you can still drill down in certain, discussions. But it does have its limitations. But I can tell you as a relative newcomer, I've been overwhelmed by the original set of docs because there's everything there, and I can't just review all the video. Slack sort of was a semi-happy medium because I can go deep in as far as I wanted to, sort of. But I can take all the information. I have some high bandwidth. I could read stuff, but there's no way you could digest all the videos or even the summaries of the videos.
Completely understandable. And I think that's the challenge, right? How do you welcome people and then get them to find their lane and then know about the other conversations that are going on, which is why something like this. So thinking about like Jeff and Valto, Mike and Lauren, like how do we connect networks in how do you lead when no one's leading, no one's in charge, kind of thing. So right now we have the scaffolding that the Kauffman Foundation helps support, but eventually that scaffolding will be dismantled and things are got to go. And so how do we come together as a community or communicate, or even like come into this. So Jeff was in a group of ESHIP champions that are talking about how do we onboard and introduce, or how do we make this a valid thing, but without all the resources. So, Lauren?
Well, I mean, I think we do. I think from my experience of network building, I think we do. A person does exactly what's being done here. Is people just start to build. You know, we're bees in a hive. we're starting to make the hive. So it's kind of an organic process there. And I think that a lot of the scaffolding that came along with Kauffman will still be around, and some of it will change, but the more that's built by the community, the more resilient it will be. And so kudos to everyone. I think the things that are just on top of mind as I'm listening is not particularly about the projects that were just discussed. I'm clear on where those are at. And now that I'm hearing more, I'm looking forward, particularly around the terms, to get involved there. And I like that this group is also thinking about creating some process and some standards between multiple of these, because that's getting people into the practice of creating shared language, shared standards, a shared sense of what's good and what we understand to be commonly working. So I think that sounds good. I look forward to participating on whatever platform is chosen. I think what we have been thinking about, and this is very kind of nascent, but I think important, is where Kauffman could potentially be supportive. And I'm not making a declaration right now. I'm just sharing things that we're noticing and that I'm noticing from this conversation, which is that there's a lot to be built, clearly. There's a million projects to be done. And Kauffman is very slow and whatever, you know, full of all sorts of issues and things that we can and sometimes cannot change. But a couple of things I think that we can bring to bear to support these types of conversations is our convening ability. And I think one of the things when I hear about these wonderful kinds of projects happening is we've been sensing that there is a need for a while now, particularly around 3.1, the vision, 4.5, and 4.6, to be thinking about a broader conversation, including the goal champions and NRPs, around the sort of collective intent and vision around sort of what would maintain and support the field. And I'm not saying I know how that conversation exactly should go. I have some thoughts, but the point is I think that together with some NRPs and the goal champions, we can work to put together an agenda for an event, I believe, that would help us surface the collective intent of a much broader group so that projects like this can be refined with a larger group of people. I think the only shortcoming of some of the projects now is that there are a lot of other players in ecosystem work that we need to make visible about all the infrastructure that's being built. So basically, I think that there's an opportunity to have a much larger convening, hopefully sometime this year, to start working through more on a collective level where we are looking at the future vision, what a future network, a more formalized network could look like, and what shape that would take and what that would provide to those who participated. This is a very kind of nascent project. It's been in my project portfolio for this year, but given COVID and the changing of all of the summit dates, it's been not easy for me to come back to the goal champions to say, okay, here's the thought, here's the agenda, here's how the conversation might roll out. But all I can say is, I think that a lot of these designs and structures that you're building also hang on the larger network that we could be a part of, and how we will refine these ideas also with other organizations and other folks that are in the broader practice of ecosystem building. And I think that there's an opportunity to kind of bring that work in front of them and to co-design more around the future of these initiatives. That being said, we are still getting some of our ducks in a huddle around that. But what I can tell you is if it makes sense for us to move forward on that, The agenda would be, I think, fully informed and co-designed with goal champions, and that the work that's been done here and the work that's been done with the vision group in goal 3, I think would be part of that process. And so basically, I won't be designing any event that we don't design together, but just noticing that there is a need for, I think, another larger level forum and conversation. It would go slower since it would probably be virtual, but that's okay. We can account for it. And I think the most important thing is that it's really bubbling up now. I'm seeing lots of people kind of, basically, I think there's an opportunity for coherence and a place to understand kind of what we're building towards as a field, and particularly to decenter Kaufman from that conversation, so that people really feel like, okay, Kaufman's a seat at the table, but isn't the table. What are we building towards? What's the structure that would hold this conversation moving forward? And then many of these elements that are being built on this call, I think, are great contributions to some of how that could work. So I don't know if that's TMI, too much information, but basically those are thoughts that we've been having. And so we're just trying to kind of get a sense of timing and when that would best work. But I don't think we should wait too long. Like, it feels too long to wait till next year to start up some of those conversations, since there's so many people involved, and I can feel the opportunity of alignment is pretty ripe. And so I really hope that that's something we're able to come together around. And I really look forward to the opportunity to be able to co-design something with this group and the Gold Champions and Andy and whatnot. So that's, I guess, just a thought. It's not exactly around the specific projects, but I think it kind of implies a lot about how those can be brought to bear to a larger group.
And Marcus, I know you're driving and you should not be texting and whatever, but I did bring discourse into the conversation because we talked about that. So. Eric, welcome. Who else has some thoughts?
I could just follow up with the points that Lauren made, just from the perspective that I think a logical way to follow up with that type of initiative would be once the kind of the vision work gets to its kind of aggregated draft mode that is being done now. So then kind of if there's an opportunity to first kind of, now I think there's like this 3 different versions being created, first from the all, and then trying to merge those into one, and then ultimately try to kind of validate that if every kind of from different perspectives actors agree on with that. And if that is finally established, then it would be logical to then, okay, how does this kind of then translate into practical things from different roles perspectives. And I think that overall, like the parts that I was going through also in the kind of the summary part is that we all seek for some kind of structure. I think that I mean, the initial structure that has been put in place a while back is, of course, it's like anything. It's the first structure, and then we live the real life, and then we see like, okay, now we have lived with this, and then we see, okay, now we know what works and what's not working, and those conversations have been gone through in different calls. So basically, based on that, then it's like different people looking from different perspectives. How do we pull the working parts together? What is kind of the skeleton or the frame that we then populate with these all the right things? But instead of building a house, we are building like an engine, and that's a key part for me, that we should not think of it as a project that we build it once and it's done, but we are working with the moving parts, moving machines, and we need to be careful not to point, screwdriver in a wrong place, or it's gonna just make a lot of damage. So how do we work with the running machine at the same time building that architecture around it, and what parts can we remove and what parts we can't, so that it doesn't break. And that's kind of like bringing these different pieces together, but in that kind of architectural place, like if we can kind of set the boundaries and then start to build within and kind of carefully move things closer to each other and so forth. So want to kind of have this clear separation between thinking of things as projects versus thinking a process that keeps running and producing what needs to be produced. And then also to Cecilia's point about tools, and also CJ's point about tools, that the tools are always, we all have our own favorites, and the tricky part is to think of us as collective and think of what works as then for the collective. But I don't think we can define the tools before we know the processes that we need to run. So kind of tools are then needed for the purpose that we have decided that this is the process, what we actually want to run, and that should produce what we want it to produce. And if we can see theoretical that process producing what we want, then we can try it in practice if it actually does. But that's kind of like, I was myself kind of, when we followed that open source call last time, then thinking like, okay, we need something like Trello or something to, manage the tasks to be done. And then I quickly took a U-turn and said, whoops, I'm not going to do this myself now, because yet one more tool and it's just a distraction. So let's stick with Google Doc and Slack until we collectively decide otherwise. So anyway, rambling around, but wanted to share that with you as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about this, and I don't know if y'all can hear me or not. Yeah, as I said, I'm on the road. Celia, I dropped off right as you were addressing me. So I guess my first question is, what exactly are we talking around as far as the building versus the process? But then I've got some thoughts, I think, in relation to what Balto has.
No, we were just sense making. The reason that I brought you into the conversation was because you and I talked about discourse as like the old school forum opportunity. But to Valta's point about important to define the process of what we want to do and then identify the tools that are applicable is I think spot on. But I really love the engine analogy. So I'm just going to leave it to you, Marcus, to share your thoughts, because you've been, you like CJ kind of came into the community around the same time, and then it's been drinking out of the fire hose for both of you, but then both of you are like really active and we haven't scared you off yet. So that's good.
Well, I don't know if that's to speak to my own insanity or the quality of the community, but that all being said, I've been operating on a similar vein with what we do at Axon Collective, as far as building out the tool sets necessary for connecting together what we're doing and making sense of it all. And one of the tools that I've mentioned before in the community is Notion. I think it's a great tool, but I think, again, kind of to Valta's point, we should define what exactly needs to be done. My response to that, though, is also, if we take too long defining the tool that we need, then someone else is going to come through and create the keystone for what we're doing before we actually decide what's the best solution. And that's, the internet was created that way, and we still use it. Should we be happy about that or not? I don't know. But my thing is, how do we act on defining that process and then defining the tools we need? Because if we don't do that, someone else is going to do it regardless if we're on board or not.
Good points. Jeff, I feel like there's a lot percolating. No? Nothing percolating? Come on. Eric,
no, just listening in. This Notion tool looks worth exploring.
Notion is really cool because it allows you to structure data both like you would for a wiki, but also like you would for like Airtable. So you can create really powerful lists, and you can create really powerful like task boards and stuff like that, all within the greater form of documentation and the processes that you were creating. And so that's why I like Notion. It is a paid tool. I think they have a tier for like nonprofits and whatnot. but there are ways to kind of get around the paying part. It's a little bit kludgier. But it really has, I think, taken the cake as far as productivity tools and communication tools in the different circles that I've talked for organizations.
I think, hey, this is Eric. I guess, and I'm joining this conversation late, so I don't want to pollute it with whatever might be on my mind. I guess the question I've got right now is, how can we quickly make a decision to get to a platform where we start using it? How can that happen within 5 days? Is that like, can someone say what does this platform need? I like Discourse. I've used it with Code for America. I've seen Notion that looks pretty good, but what is it that gets us to a decision that we can start using it on Monday? If that's possible, that would be fantastic.
I agree.
If anybody wants to spend another month looking at, oh, well, there's 5 platforms. Yes, there are 5 platforms. I will shut up.
I
appreciate that input, Eric.
Yes. Mike, what are you thinking?
I've been distracted. I've had people stopping by my house with different stuff. What was the question? What was the main topic?
I think we're trying to figure out how to, it seems like we're talking about how we get started defining the process. Like, how do you start rolling the ball? Or what balls need to be rolled? Or I think that they're all actually rolling is what it is. I think it's gotten to the point where we're trying to see which ones are lining up and aligning with other ones. So there's an interdependency, there's an overlap conversation. There's a lot of that because we want to, I mean, we talk about connected networks. It's trying to make sure that we're not having a conversation about definitions in goal 3, although it's a nuance to goal 3, but not knowing that there's conversations going on in goal 5, right? So
yeah.
Visibility.
I think that this coherence work that's being done right here between the goal conversations is wonderful. And it's something you can directly address. And I agree with Eric, like in terms of pick a platform, I'm happy with it, do it, that's my preference, so that there's not endless spirals in the conversation. But I think it sounded to me, just to reflect on what I was hearing, it sounded to me like there's already initiatives in place. The magic that's available right now is to make some coherence between the goals, right? Where there are common conversations happening. And if that requires a shared decision around technology, that would go back to Eric's question about how do we make that swiftly so that these efforts to cohere around language or standards or other things like that can start to happen. I think in addition to that, I think the other point is that if I would just focus, my personal opinion would be, I think it would be wise to focus just right now with those efforts between the goals, because this other conversation I was mentioning will have broader implications by adding all the other actors or a lot of the other key actors who've been working, who'll have their own thoughts about these things. So I want to be careful, basically, that we don't build too much structure such that before many of the other voices come to the table, that it doesn't feel like you built things and then we have to rebuild them over here. So my question really, or my sense is, what is the minimal structure that will allow you to keep doing this coherence activity that I think is super useful and is a great example and is really modeling to all the other NRPs and other people about how to really work around the goals, such that when the other NRPs and other people start to come to the conversation, they see what they basically need to be doing with you, which is talking about how to develop the goals and how to create coherence across the goals and make shared decisions and where you're organizing your thinking about that. So that's kind of my sense, is maybe not going too structure heavy, but just enough so that when we do have that broader conversation, there's a good model about the type of coherence that you're creating between the goals, which I think is right on.
So I was going to type it in the chat. I just want to make sure because we have 4 minutes left. To Jeff's question about Living Dictionary, I think that's the intersection of Living Dictionary and the Goal 5 definition mapping work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of starting to wonder if we're too siloed in these goals. If there's things that are arising that are, this thing is, you know, some of it's happening in goal 5, some's in goal 3, something in goal 4. Maybe we're limiting ourselves too much by this goal structure, the call structure.
And maybe, I mean, if there's this common goal call that happens every so often too, maybe that's where this tension can be breached. I actually do think that some of these points are cross-functional more than they are topical. And the goals sort of treat certain things as topical, but actually I think they're cross-cutting and functional. And I do think that I almost think that one of my sort of random dreams would maybe be that when we get into this larger group, the broader committed group of ecosystem practitioners, that we could sort of reassess the goals a little bit, because I do think that there's a little bit of confusion around their languaging and maybe some of the things that are interdependent that many people have noticed, and just scrutinize that a bit and fix them up a little bit because I think that they do create a little bit of confusion.
You know, I'm again, as a newcomer to this, I'm just looking at, it's been almost 3 years of ESHIP, you know, goal planning and all of that. And there's an upcoming virtual conference where we're expected to deliver some things. And you know, there's collaboration and there's crowd collaboration, et cetera. But there's a point at which, again, putting a stake in the ground, and you know, where not everybody votes on every decision, where there are certain people to take take charge, but take responsibility, and again, not have it also be undermined by, you know, okay, you know, once they put it out there, then 500 people have to reach a consensus on it. It will take even more years if that you know, is done. Yeah, you may get a consensus and something tangible, but it'll be 2030 by the time that happens, and ecosystems will have changed. So just my, you know, outsider's opinion, I'm, you know, even though my title is academic, I've spent many years as an entrepreneur and CEO. So I'm more of, hey guys, look, let's just make a decision, get it done. It's not going to, it may or may not be perfect, and not everybody's going to agree. But you know, there will be something done. And, you know, the only prerequisite is that, yeah, we have a couple of goals, and that we trust that, you know, people are competent who are working on it.
Yeah, like, I don't know, I think Eric is kind of, you know, lended himself to this as well as what CJ is saying, and I feel the same way. Is like, there's a level of action that needs to just happen, even if we don't get total consensus. But the response to that is there needs to be, you know, some type of structure around creating that. And I think that's where, you know, the whole open source thing came in, was like, the open source community has been dealing with this and understanding governance for forever. And the open source community doesn't do stuff purely based off of like everybody saying yes. And so I think there might need to be that conversation of how do we create a better governance, a better structure for the ESHIP community if we really do want to make action happen. Because, you know, talk is the, I don't know what the, you know, the phrase is, but like, talk is the nemesis of action. And so like that's where I land, is like, how can we make stuff happen even if it is making someone a responsible party?
I think it's really, I personally feel a little different. I feel like talk is part of action, personally. But I agree, and I don't think that everyone needs to be in consensus for things to get started on. I do, however, think that the real question is, what do we need to be in consensus on? And can we, as a collective, focus on what's essential around that, not imagining that everything that we act on needs to be in consensus, because that would be silly and too slow, like everyone has said. But there are moments where we do need some consensus so that we can move collectively. And I think pointing out where those essential parts are and working on those is what this conversation I'm talking about is, and then letting the rest dangle and letting people be very entrepreneurial and letting many activities happen. So it's about that choice point and discerning what is important for us to be democratic and consensus based about, and then what we can be individual and entrepreneurial around. And I think that discernment is kind of part of what that process would be.
I think that what, my view of ESHIP goals has always been that it's a framework. It's given us an opportunity to come together to view the points that we need to make sure, the pillars of which we build around, knowing that these are interdependent and entwined. Goal 1 about inclusion doesn't mean that we have to focus on inclusion and focus on the other things, right? Inclusion should be baked into everything we do. Connection should be baked into some of the ideas that we work around. So where if we're going to define things, then we need to figure out what it is we're going to define and put standards around them. So all of it kind of intertwines and overlaps and is interdependent. That's the basis of complex systems, right? So all we did, actually, it's the going slow to go fast to the past, and 3 years really for this kind of thing is not a whole lot of time. We keep wanting to do it quickly. And there are things that should be done quickly, don't get me wrong, but we spent a bunch of time sense making, and now we're moving along, but we're moving along with much better foundation than we would have had we just started out in 2017 and said, let's build a field of ecosystem building, go, right? So now we're thinking about the things that matter. We're noticing where all the overlaps are. And this is actually the evolution of how these things go. So I think that it does make sense. We talk about the ESHIP goals as they are, not going on in perpetuity. I think it does become maybe 2 or 3 calls where, some of it's around project teams and some of it is around, do you want to learn what ecosystem building is? And some of it's around, the people that are putting all these things together. So there's an evolution and there's an opportunity, and it's coming, it's happening. Alistair, if he was on this call, would probably tell us it is happening exactly the way it's supposed to happen. So yeah, that's great. It's 3:03 Central Time. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Thank you all so much for all of that, and we'll be in touch. I think this was helpful, and we just need to kind of keep doing what we're doing and doing it together, which is the most important part, right? Eric, do you want to share something before we go?
Not in particular.
Okay.
I just appreciate this group. It's a great group.
That's great. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your week. Join us on Thursday afternoon if your energy allows, and we'll talk to you soon.
Right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.